In the headlines tonight, Office of the Prime Minister rebukes concerned international bodies for failing to investigate TPLF's grave atrocities. Protesters storming the streets of Sudan opposing recently signed New Deal. Good evening to you all. Welcome to ETV News. I am Grum Tariko. Some international organizations and Western nations have conspicuously failed to investigate the massive human rights violations and grave atrocities being committed by the TPLF. This shows their politically motivated and double-standard position when it comes to the way human rights issues are addressed. In Ethiopia, this came in when the Office of the Prime Minister gave press briefing this afternoon to foreign media. Shifara Ulako reports.
The Office of the Prime Minister has given its weekly press briefing to foreign media outlets. The briefing disclosed that the National Defense Force, along with regional forces, are registering remarkable victory against the invading TPLF, including the recapturing of strategic areas. However, the TPLF has left a trail of destruction while fleeing away in disarray.
In addition to the destruction of property, directly affecting many lives, there is evidence emerging across many towns of grave atrocities and human rights abuses being inflicted by TPLF upon innocent civilians in those towns. In Gashana, in the North Shawa town of Ansokia, we have reports of mass killings that have been undertaken by the TPLF on innocent civilians. Similarly, there are also vast reports of rape that are emerging across these towns that were also occupied by TPLF. Again, while these are initial testimonies that we are sharing and that are surfacing, further investigations are needed to expose these grave human rights violations and also to hold the group accountable. At this point in time, for the federal side, there are investigators on the ground gathering as much evidence as they can.
Some international organizations and Western nations have conspicuously failed to investigate the massive human rights violations and grave atrocities being committed by the TPLF.
Yet it's also important over here to highlight that the failure of some Western countries and international organizations to look into these massive human rights violations and atrocities committed by the invading TPLF forces in the areas of the Amhara and Afar regional regions makes it clear that there might be some politically motivated and double-standard position when it comes to the way that human rights issues are addressed in Ethiopia, particularly by these groups.
They're also showing a double standard when it comes to humanitarian assistance in the Tigray region.
The latest figure that I have is that a total of 203 trucks have arrived in Tigray with humanitarian supplies, and this has reached Mekelle. Again, some members of the international community that have been raising concerns about lack of humanitarian assistance in the Tigray region are also still quiet on the hold-up of 900 trucks by the TPLF that could be used to transport food and non-food items. And there is growing evidence to suggest that there is a refusal on the other side to return these trucks. Yet TPLF, as we have seen, is still using these trucks to move around its combatants from place to place and also to transport the looted items from areas it has been routed out from. So yet again, here there is a double standard exhibited in this regard as well, where the silence to TPLF's vast human rights abuses, the looting of property, the destruction, has been conducted in real time. The silence is quite questionable.
The press secretary has also called on the diaspora community to come home and show strong solidarity with their compatriots.
Ethiopian Defense Force continued to liberate towns and cities in Afar and Amhara regional states from the TPLF insurgents, proving wrong all doubts. Talking to ETV English spokesperson of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Dina Mufti, said the victory disproves all doubts of governments in the West. Commenting on the ever-deteriorating relationship between Ethiopia and the US, Dina expressed his country's commitment to have sound relationship with the U.S. based on mutual respect. Haptamu Ashagre reports.
The victorious journey of the Ethiopian Defense Force towards clearing the TPLF insurgents from Afar and Amhara disproves the distorted narratives of the West that Ethiopia is about to fall on the hands of rebels. Talking to ETV English spokesperson for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Dina Mufti said some Western countries have been detached from reality regarding the real situation in Ethiopia.
There are misunderstandings of what has been going on in Ethiopia by some corners in the Western world. I'm not saying totally the Western world, I'm saying by some in the West. There is misunderstanding of the content and the objective of the law enforcement operations that has been going on in the country. One, this is an internal issue, this is an internal matter. It's something that can be resolved by the government of Ethiopia itself. It needs to be by those close friends that could be invited to mediate if the need arises.
The courageous decision of the Prime Minister to lead the army at the front lines has changed things a great deal, the spokesperson remarked.
This victory has been scored particularly due to the leadership of the Prime Minister Dr. Abiy Ahmed, who is on the front, on the spot. This is an exemplary leadership and very unique and peculiar in African cases.
Mr. President, hands off Ethiopia! Hands off Ethiopia! Hands off Ethiopia! Hands off Ethiopia!
Commenting on the deteriorating relationship between Ethiopia and the US, Ambassador Dina said Ethiopia is always committed to strengthen the long-standing bilateral ties with US based on mutual respect.
Ethiopia-US relation had been there for the last 100+ years. Ethiopia cherishes, loves this relationship, and we have been nurturing it for years. And it is to the benefit of the people of both countries. It is also to the benefit of the region and to the tranquility, peace and stability of the region. So this historic relationship should be taken care of, and no one should obliterate it and abuse it in the way we can sense some corners of the recent administration are trying at tarnishing the image of this relationship. And this relationship should be restored. It is in the best interest of Ethiopia to restore it.
The Ethio-US bilateral relations are critical in the whole region in the fight against terrorism and extremism. Political experts advise the US to reconsider its recent policy towards Ethiopia.
No more! No more! Intervention! No more intervention! No more! No more terrorism! No more terrorism!
As the Ethiopian Christmas holiday is upon us, Ethiopians in the diaspora are being challenged to come home for Christmas. 1 million diaspora by January 7th, 2022.
Many fear the U.S. will intervene in the year-long fight in their country. The government calls them the rebels. Protesters tell us the rebel group members of TPLF in Ethiopia for many years.
That government is no longer in power, and my family's free and living in freedom. They get to speak as they want about the government.
The State Department called
We want that policy to change. We wanted to strengthen Ethiopia and support economic and regional security.
They get support from US actually.
This is the time to stand up and say, nope, Africans can solve their problems by Africans.
The TPLF sealed its fate the minute it crossed state boundaries and made a voracious footage into the Amhara and Afar regional states. But how did the TPLF, which ruled the nation for close to 3 decades with an iron fist, expect to repeat its military victory about years ago, while it was clear that the situation has changed drastically? The following reportage by Sintayo Tamrat will shed more light on the matter.
How could the TPLF miss the fact that in the past 3 decades, the entire social, political, diplomatic and economic fabric on the ground has so diametrically changed to warrant charging on Addis the way they did in 1991? In those days, except perhaps for a couple of districts in North Wollo and Gondar, the rest of the country had hardly any knowledge of the TPLF. To the absolute confusion and frustration of the then incumbent government, folks were too war-fatigued there. They were willing to give EPRDF a chance. The honeymoon lasted just under 4 years. EPRDF was a little too quick to show them its true color. The TPLF has unrecognizably polarized the nation. The general public has alienated them and their boon companies and never disclosed its true intention around their presence. It was that much disgusted with the administration. In such circumstances, the least they could do was take advantage of the magnanimity of the country, apologize, and move on. The one thing that has set Ethiopians against this terrorist TPLF was its despicable divide and rule policy. They kept bribing, recruiting, and organizing disgruntled thugs against the incumbent the way they used to break up opposition parties. It totally eludes them that Ethiopians had collaborators more than the conquerors. They thus endeared the ruling party more than it has imagined in its wildest dream. The landslide victory the incumbent won in the June election chiefly owed to the belligerency of TPLF. After losing the senseless battle to the gallant Ethiopian troops, the TPLF leaders have been trying in vain to fool the world into thinking that it was a planned retreat, but it wasn't. The fact is that the TPLF heavily lost in all fronts and the remnants of its troops are now choked between South Wollo and North Shawa with no way out. The TPLF also lied to the world that its troops retreated in a strategic manner, citing that the places which it evacuated weren't that necessary. In the first place, the TPLF has failed to convince the world that this was so. If places like Gashana, Kamise, Marsa, and Shawarobit weren't necessary, why did it have to pay a huge sacrifice to occupy them and tell the world that they were all launching pads in its advance into Addis Ababa? Second, even some of its staunch allies amongst the international media are saying that the TPLF retreated from strategic places like Desi and Waldia. Hoping against hope that it can mobilize the entire Tigray and the diaspora at large, the TPLF told Tigrayans that its war was against the invading Ethiopian troops. That did not work because the Ethiopian troops only retaliated after it assaulted a federal army camp, thus committing treason. Although the TPLF tried in vain to portray the administration of Abiy Ahmed as another remnant of the Derg regime, the plea fell on deaf ears.
We are Ethiopia! We are Ethiopia! A free nation! A free nation! We are Eritrea! We are Eritrea! A free nation! A free nation! We are Somalia! We are Somalia! A free nation! A free nation! We are the Horn of Africa! Adwa again! Adwa again!
You are watching ETV News. The TPLF terrorist group, which mounted a foray into North Shoa zone of the state of Amhara before being annihilated lately, has caused massive destruction, looting as well as massacre against innocent civilians. One of the places which had to endure a months-long battle with the TPLF is Antioquia Gamza district. ETV's interview with command post and militia leaders revealed that the terrorist group unleashed brutal massacre against innocent civilians. Take a look.
This district was on the alert for a whole month. The TPLF attempted its first round of invasion in early November. When it failed, it mounted a second one. The TPLF assaulted the district using a three-pronged attack. The TPLF force from the Majete area, although defeated at last, was dangerous and caused massive destructions. It was such a gruesome scene with lots of people were killed and maimed. When we defeated the TPLF on the battlefield, the remnants took revenge on us at the Asalal Kalabat Wambara area. Death and destruction are common battlefield sites, but this retaliatory measure by the TPLF was nothing short of genocide. The TPLF fighters unleashed terror, walking door to door and arbitrarily killing people.